I was 7 months pregnant when my husband said my ex needs me right now more than you do. I asked what could possibly be more important than his pregnant wife. He said she's having a breakdown because her new boyfriend left her. I have to go take care of her. 3 days later, I went into premature labor alone and nearly died from complications. When he finally showed up at the hospital, I handed him divorce papers. I'm a 29-year-old marketing manager, and my husband David is 32. We've been married for 3 years and together for 5. David works in finance, and I thought we had a solid relationship built on trust, communication, and shared goals. One of those goals was starting a family, which is why I was over the moon when I got pregnant earlier this year. The pregnancy had been going well. We'd done all the appointments together, picked out nursery colors, chosen a name, Benjamin, and David seemed genuinely excited about becoming a father. He'd been reading parenting books, talking to the baby when I was sleeping, and telling everyone he met that he was going to be a dad. But there was one complication in our otherwise happy life: David's ex-girlfriend Rachel. Rachel and David dated for 4 years before we met. They broke up because Rachel wasn't ready for commitment and wanted to explore her options. David was devastated at the time, but he eventually moved on and we started dating about 6 months after their breakup. Rachel had always been a background presence in our relationship. She texted David occasionally, usually when she was between boyfriends or having some kind of crisis. David always insisted they were just friends and that their history was in the past. I trusted him, though I'll admit Rachel's tendency to reach out during her low moments always bothered me. She doesn't have a lot of close friends, David would explain. I'm one of the few people she feels comfortable talking to about personal stuff. I try to be understanding. Everyone has exes, and some people maintain friendships. But Rachel's friendship with David seemed to involve a lot of emotional support flowing in one direction, toward her. When I got pregnant, David told Rachel the news and she congratulated us both. She seemed genuinely happy for us and even sent a baby gift when we announced the gender. I thought maybe having a baby would finally establish clear boundaries and that Rachel would step back from her emotional dependence on David. I was wrong. At 7 months pregnant, I was dealing with all the normal discomforts of the 3rd trimester. I was tired, my back ached constantly, and I was getting nervous about the approaching due date. David had been great about helping around the house and coming to all my appointments. I felt supported and loved. Then Rachel's latest relationship imploded. She'd been dating a guy named Marcus for about 8 months, and according to David, she thought he was the one. She'd been talking about moving in with Marcus and had apparently started planning a future with him. Then Marcus abruptly broke up with her, saying he wasn't ready for the level of commitment she wanted. Rachel was devastated. She started calling David multiple times a day, crying about the breakup and asking for advice. David would spend hours on the phone with her, sometimes stepping out of the room to talk privately when the conversations got particularly emotional. I tried to be patient. Breakups are hard, and I understood that Rachel was hurting. But the constant phone calls were starting to affect our relationship. David was distracted during our conversations, always checking his phone to see if Rachel had texted. When we'd go out for dinner or spend time together, he'd be responding to her messages throughout the evening. "Can't this wait?" I asked one night when Rachel called during our date night. "We're trying to have dinner together." "She's really struggling right now," David said, declining the call but immediately texting her back. "I just want to let her know I'm here for her." "What about being here for me?" I asked. "I'm 7 months pregnant and I need support too." "You're fine," he said dismissively. "You're strong and you have everything under control. Rachel is falling apart." That comment stung, but I let it go. I figured once Rachel worked through her emotions about the breakup, things would go back to normal. Instead, they got worse. Rachel started having what she described as panic attacks and told David she was afraid to be alone. She'd call him in the middle of the night, sobbing and saying she needed him to come over. David would get dressed and drive to her apartment at 2 a.m. to sit with her until she calmed down. "This can't continue," I told him after the 3rd middle-of-the-night rescue mission. "I'm pregnant and I need you here with me. What if something happens and I need to go to the hospital?" "Nothing's going to happen," David said. "And if it does, you can call me and I'll come home." "You shouldn't have to come home. You should already be home." David got defensive, saying I was being selfish and unsympathetic to Rachel's mental health crisis. He said Rachel was going through the worst time of her life and that as her friend, he had an obligation to support her. "What about your obligation to your pregnant wife?" I asked. "That's different. You're not having a crisis. You're just pregnant." Just pregnant. Like carrying his child was some minor inconvenience that didn't require his attention or support. The situation came to a head last Tuesday evening. I was having a particularly difficult day, my back pain was worse than usual, I'd been having Braxton Hicks contractions on and off, and I was feeling anxious about some work deadlines I was trying to finish before maternity leave. David came home from work and I was looking forward to a quiet evening together. Maybe we could work on the nursery or just watch a movie and talk about baby names. I'd made dinner and was hoping we could reconnect after a week of Rachel drama. We barely sat down to eat when David's phone started ringing. Rachel, of course. I should take this, he said, reaching for his phone. Can't it wait until after dinner? I asked. We haven't had a conversation without interruption in days. David looked at the phone, then at me, clearly torn. He declined the call, but immediately started texting Rachel. I told her I'd call her back in an hour, he said. We tried to eat dinner, but David was clearly distracted. His phone was buzzing constantly with texts from Rachel, and I could see him getting more agitated with each message. Finally, he couldn't take it anymore. I need to call her back, he said. She sounds really bad. David, please. Can we just have one evening together without Rachel's drama taking over? This isn't drama, he snapped. She's having a mental health crisis. He called Rachel back and I could hear her crying hysterically through the phone. David was trying to calm her down, speaking in soothing tones and asking what had happened. From what I could gather, Rachel had been looking through old photos of her and Marcus and had convinced herself that she'd never find love again. She was talking about how worthless she felt and how she couldn't handle being alone. The conversation went on for 2 hours. 2 hours of David reassuring Rachel, telling her she was amazing, and promising that things would get better. Meanwhile, I sat alone at our dinner table, my food getting cold, feeling invisible in my own home. When David finally hung up, I was crying. What's wrong? He asked, like he genuinely didn't understand why I was upset. I feel like I don't matter anymore, I said. Rachel calls and you drop everything. I need you to, David. I'm scared about the baby, I'm uncomfortable, and I miss spending time with my husband. You're being dramatic, he said. Rachel is going through something really serious right now. And I'm not? I'm about to have our first baby and I feel like I'm doing it alone. That's not fair. I've been to every appointment with you. Being physically present isn't the same as being emotionally available. You're always thinking about Rachel, always worried about Rachel, always rushing to fix Rachel's problems. David got angry then, accusing me of being jealous and unsupportive. He said Rachel was a good friend who was going through a difficult time, and that I should be more understanding. She doesn't have anyone else, he said. Her family lives across the country and she doesn't have close friends here. I'm all she has. What about me? What about our baby? Aren't we your priority now? Of course you are, but that doesn't mean I should abandon my friends when they need help. We went to bed angry that night, barely speaking. I hoped that maybe we could talk things through in the morning and find a better balance between supporting Rachel and maintaining our own relationship. But Thursday afternoon, everything exploded. Rachel called David at work, apparently in the middle of a complete breakdown. She told him she'd taken some pills, not enough to hurt herself seriously, but enough to scare David into thinking she might be suicidal. She begged him to come over immediately. David left work and drove straight to Rachel's apartment. He called me from there to tell me what was happening. I'm going to stay with her tonight, he said. She's in really bad shape and I don't think she should be alone. David, I need you to come home. I've been having contractions on and off all day and I'm worried something might be wrong. Are you in labor? I don't think so, but I'm not sure. This is my first pregnancy and I don't know what's normal. Call your doctor if you're worried. I can't leave Rachel right now. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You're choosing to stay with your ex-girlfriend instead of coming home to your pregnant wife who's having concerning symptoms? It's not about choosing. Rachel might hurt herself if I leave. You're probably just having false labor. It's normal at 7 months. How do you know what's normal? Are you a doctor now? Don't be sarcastic. I'm trying to handle a serious situation here. I hung up on him, furious and hurt. I called my doctor's office and described my symptoms. The nurse said it was probably nothing serious but suggested I come in to be checked if I was worried. I drove myself to the doctor's office, 7 months pregnant, scared, and alone because my husband was playing hero to his ex-girlfriend. The doctor confirmed that I wasn't in labor, but said I was stressed and needed to rest. He asked where my husband was, and I had to explain that he was dealing with a family emergency. I went home and tried to rest, but I was too angry and hurt to sleep. David called around 10 p.m. to check on me. How did the doctor visit go? He asked. Fine. False alarm, like you predicted. See? I told you it was probably nothing. Rachel is doing better now, but I'm going to stay here tonight to make sure she's okay. When are you coming home? Tomorrow after work. I want to make sure she's stable before I leave her alone. Friday evening, David finally came home. I was hoping we could talk about what had happened and establish some boundaries going forward. But before I could even start the conversation, David's phone rang again. "Hey," he answered. "How are you feeling today?" "Rachel." Again. This phone call was different from the others. Rachel wasn't crying or hysterical. She was speaking in a calm, calculated voice about how grateful she was for David's support and how she didn't know what she'd do without him. "You're the only person who really understands me," I heard her say. "Marcus never cared about me the way you do." David was eating it up, telling Rachel how special she was and how any man would be lucky to have her. The conversation had a tone that made me deeply uncomfortable. It sounded less like a friend comforting another friend and more like an emotional affair. After an hour of this, I'd heard enough. I went to our bedroom and started packing a bag. If David wanted to prioritize Rachel over his pregnant wife, he could have the house to himself. David found me packing and asked what I was doing. "I'm going to stay at my sister's house for the weekend," I said. "I need some space to think." "Think about what?" "About whether I want to be married to someone who puts his ex-girlfriend's emotional needs ahead of his pregnant wife's well-being." "That's not what's happening here." "Isn't it? You've spent more time with Rachel this week than you have with me. You chose to spend the night at her apartment instead of coming home when I was having pregnancy complications. You're emotionally unavailable to me because you're too busy managing her feelings." David tried to defend his actions, but I could see that part of him knew I was right. He looked conflicted, like he was finally starting to realize how his behavior looked from my perspective. "Maybe you're right," he said quietly. "Maybe I have been giving Rachel too much attention. When you get back on Sunday, we'll talk about setting better boundaries." I felt hopeful for the first time in weeks. Maybe this weekend apart would give David some perspective and we could work through this together. But Saturday evening, everything fell apart completely. David called me at my sister's house, and I could immediately tell something had changed in his tone. "Rachel really needs me right now," he said without preamble. "What happened now?" "She's having a breakdown again. Worse than before. She says she can't handle being alone and she's scared of what she might do." "David, we talked about this. You said you were going to set boundaries." "I know, but this is different. She's really in crisis. I think she might hurt herself if I don't help her." "Then she needs professional help, not her ex-boyfriend." "She won't go to therapy. She says I'm the only person she trusts." I could feel the conversation heading in a direction I didn't want it to go. "What are you saying, David?" "I'm saying I need to be there for her right now. She needs me more than you do." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Did you just tell me that your ex-girlfriend needs you more than your pregnant wife does? You're strong and independent. You have your sister there with you. Rachel doesn't have anyone." "I don't need my sister, David. I need my husband. I need the father of my baby to prioritize his family. I am prioritizing my family. But Rachel is also important to me." "More important than me?" There was a long pause. Then David said the words that ended our marriage. "Rachel needs me right now more than you do. She's going through a difficult time and I'm the only one who can help her." I was crying now, but I managed to ask, "What could possibly be more important than your pregnant wife?" "She's having a breakdown because her new boyfriend left her. I have to go take care of her." "Her boyfriend left her 2 weeks ago, David. How long is this crisis going to last?" "As long as it takes. I can't abandon her when she needs me most." "But you can abandon me?" "You're not being abandoned. You're fine. I'm 7 months pregnant and my husband is choosing his ex-girlfriend over me. I'm not fine." "You're being dramatic. I'll be back in a few days once Rachel is stable." "A few days? David, what if something happens with the baby?" "Nothing's going to happen. And if it does, you can call me." I realized then that David had already made his choice. Rachel's emotional needs would always come before my practical ones. Her crises would always be more important than my pregnancies, my health, my well-being. "Don't bother coming back," I said. "If Rachel needs you more than I do, then go be with Rachel." "You don't mean that." "I absolutely mean it. Pack your things and go take care of your girlfriend." "She's not my girlfriend." "She might as well be. You're more committed to her emotional well-being than you are to your wife's." David tried to argue, but I hung up on him. I called my sister and told her what had happened. She was furious and offered to drive to our house and pack my things so I wouldn't have to see David. But Sunday afternoon, while my sister was at our house gathering my belongings, I started having contractions. Real ones this time, not the false labor from earlier in the week. At first I thought it was just stress, but the contractions were getting stronger and more regular. I called my doctor and she told me to come to the hospital immediately. My sister rushed me to the emergency room, where the doctors confirmed that I was in premature labor at 32 weeks. They managed to stop the contractions temporarily, But I was put on bed rest and told that the baby could come at any time. Where's your husband? The nurse asked as they were admitting me. He's taking care of his ex-girlfriend, I said, and the nurse looked at me like I was delirious from pain medication. I tried calling David, but he didn't answer. I left a voicemail explaining that I was in the hospital and that the baby might be coming early. He didn't call back. Monday morning, the contractions started again, and this time they couldn't stop them. Benjamin was born at 32 weeks and 4 days, weighing just 4 pounds. He was immediately taken to the NICU and put on breathing support. I was alone for all of it. The labor, the delivery, the terrifying moments when the doctors weren't sure if Benjamin was going to be okay. My sister was there, but David, the father of my baby, was nowhere to be found. It wasn't until Tuesday afternoon, more than 24 hours after Benjamin was born, that David finally showed up at the hospital. He looked exhausted and stressed, but not because he'd been worried about his son. He'd been dealing with another Rachel crisis. "How's the baby?" he asked, like he was inquiring about a distant relative. "Your son is in the NICU fighting for his life," I said. "Where have you been?" "I couldn't leave Rachel. She had another breakdown when she heard you were in the hospital. She felt guilty and started saying it was her fault." "It is her fault. And it's your fault. I went into premature labor because of the stress you've been putting me through. That's not fair. You can't blame premature labor on relationship problems." The doctor disagrees. He said stress can absolutely trigger premature labor, especially when it's ongoing and severe. David looked uncomfortable, but he still didn't seem to grasp the seriousness of what had happened. "Is he going to be okay?" David asked, finally showing some concern for his son. "We don't know yet. He's having trouble breathing and they're monitoring him around the clock. The next few days are critical." David stayed for about an hour, looking at Benjamin through the NICU window and asking basic questions about his condition. But even during this visit, he was checking his phone constantly and seemed distracted. When he left to check on Rachel and get some rest, I made a decision that had been building for weeks. I called my lawyer. Wednesday morning, when David returned to the hospital, I was ready for him. My lawyer had worked through the night to draw up divorce papers, and I had them waiting on my bedside table. "What are these?" David asked, picking up the papers. "Divorce papers. I'm done." David's face went white. "You can't be serious. Our son was just born." "Exactly. Our son was born and you weren't here. You were taking care of your ex-girlfriend instead of being with your wife and newborn baby." "I'm here now. Too late. I needed you 3 days ago when I went into labor. I needed you yesterday when Benjamin was born. I needed you every day for the past month when Rachel's drama became more important to you than your pregnant wife. I made some mistakes, but we can work through this." "No, we can't. You've shown me exactly where your priorities are, and it's not with your family." David tried to argue, saying he'd been trying to help a friend in crisis and that I was overreacting. He promised he'd set better boundaries with Rachel and focus on our family. But it was too late. I'd spent too many nights alone, made too many doctor visits by myself, and given birth to our son without his support. I couldn't trust him to prioritize our family when it mattered most. Update 1. It's been 3 weeks since I served David with divorce papers in the hospital, and the aftermath has been both predictable and surprising. Benjamin is doing much better. He's gained weight and is breathing on his own now, though he'll probably be in the NICU for another few weeks until he reaches full-term weight. David has been trying desperately to repair the damage he's done, but his efforts have been too little, too late. He's been coming to the hospital daily to see Benjamin and has been begging me to reconsider the divorce. "I know I messed up," he said during one of his visits. "But I'm ready to change. I'll cut contact with Rachel completely if that's what it takes." "It's not about Rachel anymore," I told him. "It's about the fact that when your wife needed you most, you chose someone else. When your son was being born, you were somewhere else. Those aren't mistakes, David. Those are choices that show me who you really are." The most telling part of David's change is that he still hasn't actually cut contact with Rachel. He claims he's gradually reducing his support for her and helping her find other people to lean on, but he's still taking her calls and still prioritizing her emotional needs. Just last week, David missed his scheduled time with Benjamin in the NICU because Rachel had called him in crisis again. When I pointed out that he was still choosing Rachel over his son, he got defensive. "She's going through a really hard time right now," he said. "The guilt over what happened with you and the baby has made her worse. So now I'm supposed to feel sorry for Rachel because she feels bad about causing my premature labor?" "That's not what I'm saying." "It's exactly what you're saying. You're asking me to be understanding about the fact that you missed time with your son because your ex-girlfriend feels guilty about the problem she caused." David couldn't see the irony in his own words. Even while trying to save our marriage, he was still more concerned with Rachel's feelings than with his own family's needs. Meanwhile, my family and friends have been incredibly supportive. My parents flew in from across the country to help with Benjamin and to support me through the divorce process. My sister has basically moved in with me to help with everything I can't handle while splitting time between home and the NICU. The most surprising support has come from David's own family. His parents are horrified by his behavior and have made it clear that they support my decision to divorce him. "We raised him better than this," David's mother told me when she came to visit Benjamin. "What he's done to you and the baby is unforgivable. You deserve so much better." David's father was even more direct. "I told David that if he wants to play house with his ex-girlfriend instead of taking care of his wife and son, then he deserves to lose his family. We're ashamed of him." David's parents have offered to help with Benjamin and have made it clear that they want to maintain a relationship with me and their grandson regardless of what happens with the divorce. They've also told David that they're disgusted with his priorities and that they won't be supporting him through this situation. The family support has been validating, but it's also made David angry. He feels like everyone is ganging up on him and not understanding the complexity of the situation with Rachel. "I was trying to prevent someone from hurting themselves," he told his parents. "I can't believe you're all acting like I'm the villain here." "You are the villain," his father replied. "You abandoned your pregnant wife and newborn son for another woman. There's no complexity here, you made terrible choices and now you're facing the consequences." David has also been dealing with professional consequences. His co-workers and boss have been asking about Benjamin and congratulating him on becoming a father, but they've also noticed that he's been distracted and unreliable lately. When David's boss asked why he wasn't taking paternity leave to be with his newborn son, David had to admit that he was getting divorced and that the situation was complicated. His boss was reportedly not impressed with David's explanation and suggested he get his priorities straight. Rachel, meanwhile, has been dealing with her own fallout from this situation. Word has gotten around our social circle about what happened, and she's been facing significant criticism for her role in breaking up a marriage and causing a premature birth. Several mutual friends have cut contact with Rachel, telling her that her behavior was selfish and destructive. Rachel has apparently been shocked by the negative response, claiming that she never intended for any of this to happen. "I just needed a friend," she told one mutual acquaintance. "I didn't know that reaching out for support would destroy David's marriage." But our friends aren't buying Rachel's innocent act. They've pointed out that Rachel knew I was pregnant and chose to escalate her demands for David's attention anyway. They've also noted that Rachel has a pattern of inserting herself into David's life whenever he's in a serious relationship. "This isn't the first time Rachel has tried to sabotage David's relationships," one friend told me. "She did the same thing when he was dating Jessica before you. Rachel can't stand it when David is happy with someone else." This information has been eye-opening for me. I'd always assumed that Rachel's behavior was just about her mental health struggles, but it's starting to look like there was a deliberate pattern of manipulation designed to keep David emotionally tethered to her. Update 2. 6 weeks have passed since Benjamin's birth, and we're finally home from the NICU. Benjamin is healthy and thriving, though he's still small for his age. The doctors say he should catch up to normal growth patterns within the next few months. The divorce proceedings have been moving forward, and David has finally started to realize the full extent of what he's lost. The reality of coming home to an empty house every night and seeing his son only during scheduled visitation has apparently been a wake-up call. Last week, David finally cut contact with Rachel completely. He blocked her number, unfriended her on social media, and told her that he couldn't be her emotional support system anymore. But this decision came too late to save our marriage. "I know it doesn't fix anything," he told me when he came to pick up Benjamin for his weekend visitation. "But I want you to know that I finally see how destructive Rachel was to our relationship. I should have chosen you and Benjamin from the beginning." "You should have," I agreed. "But you didn't, and now we have to live with the consequences." David broke down crying then, admitting that he'd been in denial about the extent of his emotional affair with Rachel and how it had affected our marriage. "I told myself I was just being a good friend," he said. "But the truth is, I liked feeling needed by her. I liked being her hero. It was an ego boost that I prioritized over my responsibilities to you and Benjamin." This admission was both validating and heartbreaking. At least David was finally being honest about his motivations, but it confirmed that our marriage had been damaged by more than just poor boundaries with an ex. It had been damaged by David's need for external validation and his willingness to sacrifice his family to get it. The most difficult part of this whole situation has been watching David try to build a relationship with Benjamin while dealing with the consequences of his choices. He loves his son and is a good father during his visitation time, but Benjamin will always be a reminder of what David gave up for Rachel's drama. David has been going to therapy to work through his issues with boundaries and his need for validation from other women. His therapist has apparently told him that his behavior patterns suggest he has some deep-seated insecurities that he was trying to address through his relationship with Rachel. "I know I have work to do on myself," David told me after one of his therapy sessions. I just hope that someday you might be willing to try again. But I'm not interested in reconciliation. The trust between us has been broken in a way that I don't think can be repaired. I spent months feeling like I was competing with Rachel for my own husband's attention, and I can't go back to that dynamic. More importantly, David's absence during Benjamin's birth and early days showed me that I can't count on him during crisis situations. If something happens to Benjamin in the future, if he gets sick or hurt or needs urgent medical care, I need to know that his father will be present and focused, not distracted by some other woman's emotional needs. I've been building a life for Benjamin and myself that doesn't depend on David's unreliable support. My parents have decided to relocate to our city to be closer to their grandson, and my sister is looking for a house in our neighborhood so she can help with childcare when I go back to work. The support network I'm building is made up of people who prioritize Benjamin and me, not people who view us as secondary to other relationships and obligations. It's a healthier foundation than what David was offering. David's relationship with Rachel officially ended when he cut contact with her, but apparently Rachel didn't handle the boundaries well. She tried calling him from different numbers, showed up at his workplace, and even contacted his parents to try to get them to convince him to resume their friendship. David's father reportedly told Rachel that she'd done enough damage to his son's life and that she needed to leave the family alone. Rachel's behavior during this time has shown David exactly how manipulative and selfish she really was. I can't believe I destroyed my marriage for someone who turned out to be so toxic, David told his mother. Rachel never cared about my well-being or my family. She just wanted to keep me available for whenever she needed emotional support. This realization has been painful for David, but it's also been necessary. He needed to see Rachel's true character and understand how she'd been manipulating him for years. Final update. 4 months have passed since this whole situation began, and I wanted to provide a final update on how everything has resolved and what I've learned from this experience. Benjamin is now 6 months old and thriving. He's caught up to normal growth patterns and is hitting all his developmental milestones. He's a happy, healthy baby who has brought immense joy to everyone who meets him. David sees him regularly and is a good father during his time with Benjamin, though he'll always carry the regret of missing his son's birth and early weeks. The divorce was finalized last month. We worked out a custody arrangement that gives David regular visitation while ensuring that Benjamin's primary residence is with me. David is paying child support and has agreed to cover Benjamin's medical expenses and future educational costs. David has continued with therapy and has made significant progress in understanding why he prioritized Rachel's needs over his family's well-being. His therapist has helped him recognize that his behavior was driven by a need to feel important and needed, and that he was using Rachel's crises as a way to avoid the normal responsibilities and stresses of marriage and impending fatherhood. I was scared about becoming a father, David admitted during one of our recent conversations about Benjamin. Rachel's drama was familiar and manageable. Being responsible for a pregnant wife and a baby felt overwhelming, so I escaped into something that felt easier. This insight doesn't excuse David's behavior, but it does help explain it. David was dealing with normal anxiety about major life changes, but instead of working through those feelings with me or a therapist, he used Rachel's neediness as a distraction from his own fears. David has also come to understand that his relationship with Rachel was emotionally inappropriate long before the pregnancy crisis. He's admitted that he enjoyed the intimate emotional connection they maintained and that he was essentially having an emotional affair while married to me. I told myself we were just friends, he said. But friends don't prioritize each other over their spouses. Friends don't have long, intimate conversations about personal feelings multiple times a day. I was having an emotional relationship with Rachel while being physically married to you. Rachel, meanwhile, has apparently struggled significantly since David cut contact with her. According to mutual friends, she's been through several more relationship attempts, all of which have failed quickly. She's also apparently been telling people that David abandoned her when she needed him most, completely ignoring her role in destroying his marriage. Rachel tried to reach out to me once, about 2 months ago, to apologize for what happened. The apology was clearly more about making herself feel better than about taking genuine responsibility for her actions. I never meant for things to go so far, she said in a voicemail. I was just going through a hard time and I needed support. I didn't realize that my friendship with David was affecting your marriage. I didn't respond to Rachel's message. Her apology was self-serving and ignored the fact that she'd known I was pregnant and had deliberately escalated her demands for David's attention anyway. She'd known exactly what she was doing, and her fake apology wasn't going to change anything. The most important outcome of this entire experience has been the clarity it's given me about what I need and deserve in a relationship. I've learned that trust isn't just about fidelity, it's about knowing that your partner will prioritize your relationship when it matters most. David failed that test when he chose Rachel's emotional crisis over his wife's pregnancy complications. He failed it again when he missed Benjamin's birth to manage Rachel's guilt. Those failures revealed fundamental problems with his character and his understanding of marriage and family obligations. I've also learned the importance of having a strong support network that doesn't depend on one person. The friends and family members who showed up for Benjamin and me during this crisis have proven themselves to be reliable and trustworthy. They're the people I want in our lives as Benjamin grows up. Benjamin is surrounded by people who love him unconditionally and who understand that being part of his life is a privilege, not an obligation. David will always be his father, but Benjamin won't depend solely on David for security and support. As for me, I'm focusing on being the best mother I can be while also rebuilding my own identity as a single woman. I'm not interested in dating right now. Benjamin and I are enough for each other, but I'm open to the possibility of finding love again someday with someone who understands that family comes first. David has asked if there's any chance of reconciliation in the future, and I've been honest with him that I don't see that happening. The trust between us has been broken in a way that I don't think can be repaired, and I'm not willing to put Benjamin through the instability of trying to rebuild a relationship with someone who's already proven unreliable. I'll always regret what I did, David told me recently. Losing you and missing Benjamin's early days is the biggest mistake of my life.